All right. Now
Okay.
let's bring in Michelle Krebs from Auto Trader, something I look at frequently because I'm shopping for a used car myself. But Auto Trader does many other things as well. And
Oh,
I
Mike, you
always,
finally had to get rid of that
no, not
fine
yet.
General Motors
It's
automobile.
shopping. I said
Okay,
the
all right.
prices are a little spooky right now,
Yeah,
So
that they
I
are.
was going to have Michelle address that. But anyway, so I always assume that folks don't know who our guests are. So this is where you can kind of give a little quicker backgrounder on what you guys do at Auto Trader and your other products that you have there. Michelle?
Well, I'm Michelle Krebs. I'm the executive analyst for Cox Automotive. Cox is the parent company of companies you would know, like Auto Trader, where you go shopping for your car, or Kelley Blue Book. We also have Mannheim Auto Auctions, where we have wholesale auctions across the country, some 80 of them. And then we have a number of software businesses globally, mostly to support dealer management systems. But we're getting into new areas too. We're doing some battery recycling. We're doing a lot of prepping for the EV future.
Yes, indeed. It's quite a future indeed. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, EVs, that seems to be what everybody's diving into headlong in the auto industry. I think GM wants to have an all EV fleet within, I'm not sure what the date is, 2035 or 2030. I'm not sure exactly, somewhere around that ballpark. But certainly all the other auto OEMs around the world are jumping on that bandwagon, right?
Absolutely. I did a calculation of a number of the billions that are being invested by all the automakers around the globe. It's a stunning number. So yes, everybody's in the game. You have to be preparing for an electrified future. Of course, we don't know exactly when that will happen. When will be the inflection point? It'll be different here in the US than it is in China and Europe. But, global automakers have to be ready for it all. So we're seeing automakers not only announce products, but also announce EV battery plants. We're seeing them announce supply agreements, because getting lithium, for example, is a big deal. And we're starting to see some announcements about, okay, recycling them once they're out there.
All right. So let's talk about Mike's question here. What's happened with used car prices? I read recently the average used car price is now north of $30,000. Is that possible?
Not by our numbers, about 28,000.
Okay. Well,
still, they're
still
record high. So yeah. So here's and it's true. New car prices are up too. They're up about 12% over a year ago even. What we have seen is that there's inventory shortage of both new vehicles and used. The problem is they can't produce them because they don't in the numbers that we're used to, because of the chip shortage and other supply shortages. COVID in China has shut down some of the part supplies there. So we just can't seem to get it into gear in terms of production anywhere in the world. So we're very limited on new cars. And then, of course, the used car supply, it's better, it's more normal, but we have new competitors in it. For example, the rental car companies are buying used cars because the automakers don't want to sell them new ones, because they don't make as much money on rental cars as they do selling to retail customers. So prices are high when, it's very simple economics. Inventory low, demand is high, prices are high.
Yeah, okay. Basic supply and demand, economics 101.
So what's it going to take to make prices go down? Lots of chips in the marketplace?
Chips in the marketplace, a smoother supply chain. Nobody had a Ukraine war on their bingo card. And that is, for the European automakers, that's been a big headache, because a lot of the wiring was made in Ukraine. They're trying to ship, some of those plants amazingly are still running, not at full capacity, but they're trying to shift that around to other plants. There are other things that have been short supply, but the chips have been the one that got the big notice. So it's just going to take getting that supply chain to work more smoothly, and maybe demand cooling, although we don't see that. Demand is still really high.
Okay, so where are we? What do you see as where are we headed toward um, electrification? You talked about your company getting into battery recycling. I'd be curious to hear more about that.
Well, we haven't talked a lot about it yet, but it's a company we bought. We bought a company called Spears Technology based in Las Vegas, and they measure the health of a battery, because one of the things we do is we evaluate vehicles for what are they worth at a certain point in their life. Well, we know that with gas engines, but we don't know that, an EV, its value as it goes on in life has a lot to do with its battery health. So we're doing a lot of work on how do you evaluate and assign a value to battery health. And then, there's a finite amount of minerals that are used in EVs. They're in places we really are difficult, places like Russia. And so if we can reuse some of the minerals that are in the current batteries, that will, help a lot without having to do a lot more mining.
Yeah, people don't realize. I mean, they certainly, I guess, with their cell phones, they realize after a time the cell phone battery just doesn't have the oomph it once did. But that's pretty much true of all batteries, right?
Right. And, we have a lot to learn about the health of batteries. I mean, it depends on where you live and temperatures and how you drive and, what kinds of situations you drive in, your driving style. So we're doing a lot of work around how do you figure that out?
Sure. And in terms of are you studying the ability of the grid of the charging infrastructure that we're looking at? What are you seeing in terms of that?
We don't do a lot on the grid side. We are working with. We have some relationships, like our company's based in Atlanta, so they do work with the Georgia Power Company, talking about that, but not a little bit out of my wheelhouse. So, but it is a concern. It's something that I think I've read a headline today that, is the grid ready? So it is a big question.
Well, then there's all these issues about the EVs themselves. So there's some folks that are advocating a kind of interesting idea. I think it's used somewhere around the world, where instead of pulling into a filling station and filling up with gas or diesel, you would change out your battery for one that's already there charged, or you'd pop it in. But of course, EV batteries are no little tiny, it's not like a lithium battery that we have that powers the car when we get started. It's not, a box. Well, it is a box, but it's a very big box.
Right.
So it seems like a crazy idea, but I mean, they're looking at how do we get around the range issue? Because I mean, the EVs, I think best ones we're seeing are 200 or 300 miles, right?
We're seeing 300 and 400 miles now. So range is getting a whole lot better. But yeah, we are seeing ideas of the battery swap that's taking place in China. I don't know exactly how they do it. There's a company called VinFast. That's a Vietnamese company that's said it's going to come into the US, and they're going to do exactly that. The other thing we're seeing that's kind of interesting is instead of buying the whole vehicle, you're going to lease the battery so that you can, trade it in and keep the car traded in. And that's the most expensive part of the vehicle. So there's going to be a lot of experimentation. There will be a lot of failures. But we're going to see some new ideas emerge.
Might there still be a place for a limited number or maybe a more than limited number of internal combustion engines in a sort of hybridization of the vehicle fleet? Or is it absolutely going 100% electric?
Well, hybrids are huge. Hybrids are huge right now. And in fact, when the gas prices spiked in March, we saw a surge in shopping for EVs as well as hybrids. And in fact, things like the Toyota RAV4, the Ford Maverick, which comes standard with a hybrid engine, are among the most shopped of the electrified vehicles, because they offer a little bit, they're kind of a step in that direction without going all the way to EVs, where you can still go on a trip and not worry about having to charge somewhere. So hybrids are still a big thing. They're not part of everybody's strategy. GM does not have hybrids in its strategy, but Ford does, Toyota does, other automakers do. So it's a step, sort of a stepping, they see it as a stepping stone to fully electric.
But it gets also back to the infrastructure issue, not just for the vehicles, but for the roads. I I know there's experimental roads here in different places, excuse me, because there'll be connected vehicles and want to monitor the EVs. How long do you think it's going to take for those roads to get developed?
Oh, we can't even fill potholes. So I don't, I have no idea. But, infrastructure is a concern. When we survey consumers, the number one concern about EVs, for instance, is price, because it's all expensive ones that are out there right now. And they're concerned about range, and they're concerned about charging infrastructure. Although in the last survey we did, they were less concerned about those two things than they were about price, because we have seen range improve greatly and promises of it to improve more. And we are seeing more EV charging stations, and there's a lot more promise of more. The last infrastructure bill included some. If we ever got to Build Back Better, that would have some more in it. So people can see the promise of EV charging infrastructure, but it is still a concern.
Do you do much work in autonomy? Where are we on vehicle autonomy? I know there was a lot of talk about level 2, level 3, it being quite a while before we get to full level 5. Where do you see that going at this point?
Well, there are a couple of those. So in San Francisco, Cruise Automation, which is the autonomous vehicle unit of General Motors, they actually are licensed to allow robo-taxis without drivers. In fact, there was a funny story about one being stopped by a cop not too long ago. And the police officers were a little shocked to see no driver in the vehicle. Of course, Waymo, which is part of Google, has robo-taxis in San Francisco now, as well as Phoenix. And I think they're expanding from the suburbs and into the city. So it's coming way more slowly than, people said a few years ago, but, and I think it'll be here and more and different. I don't think you're going to have one in your driveway anytime soon. That's for sure. I think they'll be used for commercial uses, fleets, and then the robo-taxi kind of services.
What other trends do you see out there that we haven't talked about that you want to touch upon?
Well, I think one of the ones that we're really concerned about, and a lot of people are talking more and more about, is exactly how we started this program, the price of vehicles. People are being priced out of buying vehicles. Certainly the pool of people who can buy new vehicles is smaller than it used to be. It's not like the, Henry Ford, people can buy what they make. They've gotten really expensive. The average vehicle is, close to $48,000. And used vehicles have gone up in price too. So a lot of concern around, who's going to be able to afford a vehicle, and how are people going to be able to move socially, personally, professionally, if they can't afford transportation.
$48,000. Okay, I guess
46, 48. It's somewhere in that ballpark.
That must include.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's more pickup trucks that are very expensive, and luxury vehicles are selling in bigger numbers. And a lot of the automakers, especially the domestics, have abandoned that lower price market. They offer very few things under $30,000. I think.
Yeah, I know. Just for fun, I built one of the new smaller pickup trucks. I did a build and price thing online, and even one of those was well into the 50s.
It can be, yeah.
Insane, huh? All right. So if people want to check out some of the Cox Automotive products, where do they go?
Our corporate website is Cox Auto Inc., COXAUTO Inc.com. And all of our data is in the newsroom section. So anything to do with prices, inventory, that kind of thing, there it is.